Hey, so we're finally back. Finally. Today we got a special interview with Lee Luna, who you might remember did the book Clementine Fox and the Great Island Adventure that we covered over the summer. Lee agreed to do an interview with me, and this is the first interview I'm doing. So editing this has shown me that I need to be quiet and let my guest talk more. So we're learning. So here we go. Here we go. Here's the interview. I'm here with Lee Luna, and we're talking about being a cartoonist, making middle grade books. Uh, Lee's book Clementine Fox and the Great Island Adventure came out last year, and I thought it was pretty good. And Leigh was kind and generous enough with her time to join me here and talk about whatever we want to talk about. So, just before, I guess I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to give Leigh a chance to introduce herself. Can you give us just a quick bio, who you are, of course, where you're from, how'd you get into comics, what comics you read growing up, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, I'm Lee Luna. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico originally, but I live out in Los Angeles now. I've been making comics like since I could hold a pencil in any capacity. That this has been like a trajectory my entire life. I used to make or attempt to make strip comics that were about a little can, and she was just trying not to be recycled, which was actually more powerful than I had any like knowledge of when I was six.
Anti-recycling comics as a child.
I mean, it was actually very pro
Yeah.
recycling aside from this one character, but uh, yeah. Let me think. What did I read growing up? I read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes, and then manga hit the US in like the big way around 2000, and that was when I was in middle school and very much got caught up in all of that and read a lot of shoujo, a lot of like Fruits Basket and Shoujo Beat magazine, um, and that went on to influence my work in some ways. But I also, like when I was younger than that, read a lot of Beatrix Potter and more, crittery things, Redwall, which is not a comic, but yeah. So somewhere my work ends up falling usually somewhere between those two things of like intense teen drama and like very cute animal critters.
Awesome.
Do you want me to talk about working in animation?
So you what do you do now? You work in animation in Los Angeles. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I work in animation. I primarily work as a color designer, which is one of the later stages of animation. I don't write and I don't draw for that. It is all entirely painting. And I really like it a lot. I also make a lot of really cool magic effects and get to do animation in that regard. And I've worked on a bunch of shows now, but most notably like Steven Universe, Mortal Kombat, Clone High. I just worked on a show called Gentry that will be out at some point next year on Netflix.
How do you think your work in animation affects your comics process, or does it at all?
It does, but maybe in a different way than people might expect because I'm not writing. The way that my brain handles animation versus the way that it handles my comics is like very, very different. The skill set that I use for comics feels like it takes like all of my brain, but animation the section of animation that I work in takes a much smaller amount of my brain. But that also being said, I have found that I cannot do the two things at the same time as well as I used to be able to do. So mostly my animation work ends up affecting my timelines more than like any sort of physical like details of my work in terms of drawing and stuff. But depending on the show too, I'll get really in my head about how my writing works because when I'm working on a show like Centaur World or like Steven Universe, which are, immaculately written episodes written by multiple people, like an entire writer's room, to try to compare myself to that gets very, very exhausting, but I also can't pretend that it doesn't happen because it absolutely does.
Oh yeah, I know that. I noticed in Clementine, like having I work in if I work in some animation as well. I work in the black and white team, so it's usually before the color team goes on. But I see stuff that color teams in animation do, and I noticed in Clementine Fox, like you use kind of an animation palette, right? It seemed I could see I could see television animation influence from that color palette moving into your comics. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, but trying to think of how to word this, but the amount that animation has like taught me in terms of like the physicality of painting is like from such a base level that I don't know how it wouldn't end up influencing my
Of
work. But
course.
I also, in terms of Clementine is still like, it's pretty flat color overall. There's not like a ton of shading. There's not like a ton of painterly stuff going on. So I do still feel like I don't know, it is still dialed to a specific look, but that look also does remind people of Steven Universe and of Adventure Time, and that I get a lot for that book.
Yeah.
But I don't mind that. But
Oh
like, if
no.
you look at my work for Mortal Kombat, say, or some of the more anime things that I've worked on, like it looks completely different than that.
Yeah. No, and I just mean like I could see, comics a lot. I guess Mortal Kombat probably did more than anything, but comics use a lot of black uh, for spatial stuff and for layering stuff, and animation doesn't tend to use hard blacks, hard
Nope.
blocks of blacks to doesn't use them the same way. So when I saw Clementine, there's not a lot of hard blacks in it. It's all very color based. All the spatial, uh, you know, all the spatial work is done via color. All the layering is done via color. And I thought what I also liked about it is I could see Clementine animated. Right? It felt like a to me. It felt of the same vibe as a lot of the animation work you've done. It's sort of empowering, uh, middle grade young kids, fun adventure stuff. It felt really nice. It was just sort of like it felt breezy, and I liked that.
Awesome.
I
I
enjoyed
will
it.
take that.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I definitely was aiming for like adventure comedy, which is a specific like nail to hit. And I think also just having Scholastic be my publisher ended up influencing a lot of that as well, because they do have a pretty tailored look to what their stuff looks like, and mine needed to at least, be able to sit on the shelf next to it. And Scholastic doesn't end up using a whole lot of like rich
yeah,
blacks in at least in their middle grade stuff. A lot of that tends to be more colorful, which I like anyway. But Clementine used to be a black and white comic before it was pitched to Scholastic and um, before it became like a fully realized graphic novel. And when I decided to switch to having it be color, I don't know, like the concept of having like a whole background of a panel be black or like the trees be black or something like that just didn't really seem to make sense.
hmm yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So where did you just gave me a little bit of background on Clementine's origins, but where did Clementine come from? How did this book come into being?
Well, I have been making this thing since I was a sophomore in college, which is horrifying to think about because it's been over 10 years. Um, but at one point in time, you and I decided we were going to go to TCAF with a bunch of friends, and I was like, I need to make something to have a new thing to have for this convention that I have never been to before. So I spent like I want to say like 2 months just like making this 30-page little short intro to a book that was about this little fox girl who didn't want to go to school and wanted to go on an adventure instead. And that is kind of all you learned in those 30 pages, was that, and that she was going to escape, and that her parents didn't know, and that she was, or an escape in a escape from school escapism type way, not like any sort of, very real danger. But yeah, so they started there, made like 30 pages of it, went to TCAF with it. Later that year, took it to the Small Press Expo, and it was picked up by a wonderful human named Sheena Wolf. And Sheena works for, or actually, I don't know if she's still there, but Sheena works for Andrews McMeel Universal, which is the Go Comics website, and also who publishes Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield and like every single like strip comic that you see in a newspaper still goes through their company. And they blindly sent me an email and just asked if I would like to experiment doing this comic as a weekly thing on their website, and that they would pay me. And that was a wild thing to hear. So I started doing that my sophomore year, and basically like on Sundays I would draw a page of this comic and it would go up the next day on Mondays. Um, and I never managed to like build a good library of like a ton of work to like, I know a lot of web cartoonists will like pound out, like 50 pages and then they're set for a while. Like I absolutely never managed to do that with school. Um, and we did that for, I want to say we did that for about 2 years, and it did well enough, but it didn't pick up steam on the website as well as I think everyone involved in the project would have liked to see, mostly because I was still doing it in graphic novel format. Like it was a full page of comics as opposed to like a strip comic or like a single image with text, which is most of what they handle. And so the project was ultimately dropped the year that I moved to Los Angeles, which was 2018. And then I started doing some other stuff. I started coloring other people's comics. I started working in animation. And in 2017, I got laid off and felt fully like it was the first time I'd ever been laid off. I thought the world had ended. Like, I fully thought the world had
Oh
ended.
yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was fine. Like, now when I look back on it, I'm like, it was extremely fine. But I really thought the sky was falling. And at the time, my agent, whose name is Jen Lennon and who is a wonderful angel, she was like, "Hey, you're sitting on like close to 150 pages of this graphic novel that like you haven't touched in 4 years, but it would be really, or I guess that's not right, like 2 years. But if we could pitch that, that would be great." And I was like, "No, I don't want to." And she was like, "No, please let me pitch this." So well, at the time I was like, it felt like a thing I had made in college. Like it felt like a thing that
Oh
I
yeah.
had, didn't, I don't know. It felt strange to kind of go back to and revisit it. But eventually she was like, "No, please, I really think that you like have something here." So we made a pitch for it. I entirely rewrote it. Initially, when we pitched it, the plan was to keep the 100-ish pages that I had done, and that when I started drawing ended up like fully all getting reworked because like I had said, like I never really managed to build up a library when I was doing it online, and that also included having the story thought out. And so, like I was really, really doing it like, okay, and this week this happens, and I don't know what happens next week. So by the time I had to come up with an ending for it, I was like, I have no idea how to end this. Like, I don't know how to quite wrap this up in a way that makes all of the threads come together and sit together nicely. So that ended up being like a real labor of love to go back into the story and replot all of it. And also, at that point have Scholastic be weighing in on what they wanted to see versus what I wanted to write. And yeah, I don't know. It ended up shaping up really nicely. But yeah, it was a hard it was a hard collage of things to get through.
I'd say it worked out pretty well for you.
Oh,
But
thank you.
that's a wonderful origin story. That's amazing. How did you? So you were originally doing it, I guess, straight ahead, like writing by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know
Um
anything about doing that. I've never done anything like that before. What
yeah, I
is that? do you still work that way sometimes, or are you a full, I'm not wasting any amount of effort on anything, I'm plotting everything? Or how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that style of working now, I guess?
I don't hate it. I still don't hate it. But I don't pure comics anything
Yeah.
anymore. I usually script, and in the scripting process I do sort of still write that way, where I like start at the beginning and try to kind of write to an ending, which can be really difficult and doesn't always go well. But within that I end up usually getting not so much a good plot, but I'll get like scenes that I want to keep, and then from there I will start, laying out beat by beat what I want to be where.
Awesome. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Let's see.
Yeah, I wanted to write that way because I hate this, and you can keep this in, but I hate this so much. Um, it's the way that J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter. Like she just would write like a chapter and then would be like, I don't know what the hell
Yeah.
happens. And of course, like Harry Potter was a huge fucking influence on me growing up. Like how could it not be? I'm that age. But it is hilarious to like read those books now, and from a literature standpoint, just they are awful and they make absolutely no sense. And
Yeah.
I don't recommend writing that way. I really don't.
Well,
Like
I
it's not
actually,
great.
I work that way a lot. And I find that if I work totally the way logic says you're supposed to do it, right? Like have everything plotted out, everything the way it's supposed to go beforehand, before you do anything. Like I miss, like then I feel like the stories that I do that way are just stories, right? It's
Hmm.
when I am writing straight ahead, it is you're writing weird little scenes, weird little scenarios that are just you're doing because I need to have fun today. I need to do something weird today. I need to write something fun for me, right? And I feel like when I do stuff, that's where really weird, interesting story beats and concepts and details come in that then I have to try to retrofit into everything else. And if it works, it's amazing. But most of the time, most of the time it puts you in a lot of trouble where you're like, how am I going to fix this? But
For
if
sure.
if there was a way, I'm gonna stop talking in a minute. If there's a way, again, I'm not perfect at this, but like, if there's got to be a way to integrate both, and to where you know there's got to be a way to integrate both. So I'm done.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, like, I guess I should clarify too that when I was making Clementine online as that part of it, it was literally like I would thumbnail and then pencil and then ink and then scan and clean up and letter. Whereas now I'll still kind of, like I said, try to write, front to back and develop out scenes, but I thumbnail all of those at once and then rearrange them, as opposed to like thumbnailing a page and then fully realizing a
Yeah.
page, which I think is kind of where the balance ends up coming between scripting versus doing pure comics. It ends up coming out usually in my thumbnails, which is also where I like do dialogue and stuff.
So your process has definitely evolved via experience, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean Clementine is the only project that I ever made that way, and I think that that was partially just because I was in school and because of the
Oh
time
yeah.
constraints of it.
Well, I think it turned out the entire Clementine origin adventure turned out pretty well. So uh, I
Thank
think
you.
it's pretty good. You were probably working on a lot of Clementine over COVID times,
Yes.
right? How did
Hmm.
I guess did the pandemic have much of an effect on your process, on how you were thinking about it, or how you were doing it?
Not really. Aside from that, I also had a day job in animation during the pandemic, and there definitely was a point, maybe 2 or 3 months into it, that I try like into like full lockdown, that I was like, okay, I feel like I have enough of a grasp on my day job. Like I can do my day job. I'll like, I'll wake up, I'll go sit at my desk and I'll do my day job for the 8 hours, and then I will continue sitting at my desk and not leaving my house and work on Clementine for a few hours. And I want to say that maybe lasted a month before I was like, I'm going completely insane. Like I can't leave my house, but also I can't get my brain to turn off of work. Like I'm physically dreaming in Photoshop. Like this cannot be life for the next foreseeable future. So the pandemic mostly affected just the timeline of it. And it also ended up being a blessing because that book was supposed to come out in 2020 originally, like when I initially signed my deal.
Hmm.
But by the time like pandemic was hitting, that was obviously not going to be the case. But it just ended up being such a blessing in disguise for it not to end up coming out in 2020 or 2021, at least according to Scholastic.
So here's a real the most important question I'm going to ask you about Clementine Fox and the Great Island Adventure. What's up with the Murs? What are
Really good
they?
question.
Why are they so
Great question.
horribly evil? Are they?
They
They seem
they're not really
they
evil.
seem menacing. Are they men?
They're a little menacing.
I
They're a little sharky.
That's what I liked. I was like, I was reading this book, and I know this is a middle grade book, and I know I'm not the target audience for this book, but like the Murs were menacing, and I was like, ooh, you got away with putting something menacing in a middle grade book, and I liked it.
Yeah, and honestly, that I was a little bit surprised that that was a thing that was able to be kept in, because later in the book, when they are in like the fairy hollow and the giant comes in, like the menacingness within the giant was like heavily thought through in terms of like how scary it was allowed to be. um and I never wanted it to be like super super scary, but there was more. I got more notes about like his facial expression is like a little bit too severe, that I would have thought, just because first editorial experience. Now I know. But the Murs are a little bit menacing, and they are the same thing as the Plips. They are also little fairy people. They're made out of plants. They live in the ocean. They just want food. They just want your little breadcrumbs, and you're in their territory, and they want breadcrumbs.
Why am I terrified of them? Why did they affect me so much? You have to answer this. You have to tell me why. Why do I think about the Murs all the time?
Because you want to know what's going on down there. Like I don't know, maybe that is, I think that that's part of it, is that you meet them and you don't really know what
I
they
don't know
are,
what
and
they
you
are.
don't
I don't trust
really.
them, but I don't not trust them. But I don't trust them. And can you just I'll put this back towards the beginning. Can you give me a quick can you give the audience who hasn't read the book who are the Murs? What are the Murs? Just a quick overview.
Yeah, the Murs are one of the types of creatures that exist in the Clementine verse, and they're since everyone in Clementine is a anthropomorphic animal, I kind of have created a vocabulary for how I talk about the different types of creature that is in Clementine. Um, and the Murs end up being plips, which are all anthropomorphized plant life, basically. And they're all a little bit fairy-ish as well. So the Murs are plips that live in the water.
Okay.
They're all based on aquatic plants, and they are not a huge aspect of the story aside from being a uh, stumbling block, I guess, when everyone is sailing out to run away and go on their fun adventure, and they haven't fully thought through the dangers of what could be, and that is the first danger that they encounter. That also ends up giving them away as stowaways.
I love the Murs and Clementine too. Better be better be a manic maniac romp.
Oh, I do apologize. You will be
No.
disappointed.
Oh.
Book two is set entirely in a cave system in the desert.
Okay,
There's
that's
no
even better.
water.
That's even better. I don't like merge anymore. I like cave dwellers. Give me cave dwellers, desert cave dwellers. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of my next questions. So what's going on next with Clementine? What's your plan? Or is there going to be more Clementine?
I mean, there's at least one more. When I did my deal for it, Scholastic was like, let's do two, which is, I mean, that's kind of the usual middle grade deal when you sign. I am finding out that they usually want to do at least one sequel because kids really like that,
Mm-hmm.
which is nice. They want to read a series. So we have two slated and very unclear if we'll do more than that. I think that that really depends on how well they sell, and that is beyond my control.
Yeah.
But I would like to do more. So for this next one, the first one is really about learning that there are things outside of academia that make, like, I don't want to say like make life worthwhile. That sounds rather like, I don't know,
It's
grandiose, but
true. It's absolutely
I
true.
mean, the first one really is very much about how like you don't have to be good at a specific thing that you might think that you need to be good at, and the second one is very much about learning that not everyone is going to like you.
Hey,
Like
the
it's
book I
the second
need.
one. The second, I mean, me too. The second one is more of a pivot from academics more into like the friendship scope of it. At least right now in the writing process of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. When can we expect? I'm going to give you the question nobody wants. When when can we look for Clementine to?
May 2025.
Hey, okay. I was if you would ask me, I'd be like, like 2040.
Yeah, no, I mean, so
No,
a
that's
thing
great. That's
that,
coming up. That's good. And you're on
yeah,
good track. You're on a good pace for it. Everything good.
yeah, I'm on a good track to finish it.
Awesome.
Like probably by July
Ooh,
ish of this year. Yeah, so coming up.
awesome.
But ideally, like when I signed my deal and stuff, Scholastic explained to me that they really like to put out a book and then put out the second one like exactly a year after it,
Yeah.
ideally. And just with how long the first one ended up taking me like 3.5 years to do, and when we were realizing that, we were like, okay, that's probably not going to be a realistic thing, and that's okay. So yeah, unfortunately, it'll be two between the two books, but
That'll be good.
that also lets me not break my body, so that's
And that
nice.
is an important thing, especially that's an important thing that everyone needs to know. This work that you do is not. It's very fun. It can be very fun, but it is hard work, and it can
Yeah.
take a toll. I you know I'm an old. I'm on the precipice of being an old man, and uh, I'm suffering physically uh, ailments associated with the kind of work that we do. How are you? How is your physical? How is your constitution and fortitude as you continue to endeavor down this road of hardship? How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I am doing okay. I have done dance and yoga for a long time
Mm-hmm.
and still enjoy that. So like I think maybe slightly more than most of our peers do more
Yeah.
stretching and a bit more of that.
Do you
But
and do
I
you?
I don't know.
I guess do you? So you would say that is very important as someone who does the kind of work that
God,
we do
yes.
to stay as full bodily physically active as possible at all times.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the best comparison that I've made, I think that people can understand like the type of toll that it takes on your body is if you've ever like sat and played a video game for like 6 hours straight and then tried to move after it. I feel like that's kind of the best comparison to how making comics feels on your
Yeah.
body. Um, and I do that literally every day. So no, there was a point in time. I think it was when I was working at Netflix before, right before the pandemic, which was when I was still like I was going into the office and then I was going home at night and making clementine, and that ended up being fine because the office space was enough of like a disconnect from it. But during that, I was like really feeling it in my shoulder, like really, really feeling it. Strangely, in my left hand, like from doing key commands in
Mm-hmm.
Photoshop. Yeah, my hands hurt so bad for a while, and I was like, this can't be a thing. Like I'm at the time I'm 28. Like I can't lose my hands this early.
Yeah.
Like, what am I gonna do? So yeah, definitely important to stretch.
And you do yoga and dance? What kind of dance?
Yeah. The dance thing is more of a new thing, but I did it when I was younger, and I've been getting back into it
Yeah.
now that I'm over like the cringe of being in my 30s. We're embracing what I did when I was 12 again.
Yeah.
It's fun. But yeah, I started doing yoga when I lived in Minneapolis and have continued to practice that. It's fun. I
Awesome.
like to do weird handstands.
That's cool. Awesome. Do you, so this sort of, it's like, this is sort of a rehashing of the last question, but, or I guess kind of an expansion on the last one. Is there anything you would want young or new or discouraged cartoonists to know about making comics, especially long form hard comics? Like what should you at 18 know about the future you're going into?
Ooh, okay. Well, I'm going to answer that question to someone who would be 18 in the year 2023, 2024. That's when we are.
Yeah.
Um, Social media doesn't fucking matter. That's my biggest thing. And that was a thing that I very much went through when I was in art school, of just like feeling like I wasn't good enough and that my work wasn't really landing anywhere. It's really hard to do long form comics on the internet unless you are like a really, you know, words.
Special case. There
A
are
really
there are certainly special
a real
cases that allow it to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, really, unless you are like a robust like a web cartoonist on Webtoon, or like, posting to the specific like web comics platforms, it's really difficult. And social media, generally speaking, is not a great place to put narrative that is readable.
Yeah.
Um, and that is, I don't know, like if I if I could advise like any 18-year-olds to just like try to disconnect from social media and how it's going to influence your art as much as possible. Like that is like my biggest grain of salt,
Yeah.
is like do not let the Instagram of it get you down on your art. And I mean, I suffer with this constantly, but
I do too, to this day. And I agree with you, and have tried to have that attitude for the last 15 years, and it's still a struggle, every day.
it's it's so hard. Yeah. The thing that finally, like, this is the only thing that has like that broke my brain away from social media was Tumblr had died. Like Tumblr was, in its graveyard era of life. And I still had my account and I still had my art account, but I wasn't like checking it regularly. And at some point, I want to say in like 2018, I just like logged back into Tumblr to see, and a comic that I had made had gotten like 50,000 notes, which is like more than anything else I've ever had done. And I was not even aware it was happening. Like it fully happened while I was not there.
Hmm.
And I was like, this had absolutely no day-to-day like effect on my life at all. Or like, yeah, sorry, had no effect on my life in the day-to-day whatsoever. Like this did not get me a job. This did not, like, to my knowledge, get me any sort of like magical points in life or whatever. Like it happened, and yeah, like that's it.
Are you on social media at all anymore? What do you do social media wise? I guess what's your attitude towards using social media now as someone who's done this for a while?
I have an Instagram account, and that is kind of where I've decided to lay my personal boundary on this stuff. But like this is also coming from, like, I am 30. I am the exact same age as the internet. Like I had a MySpace account probably since I've been on social media since I was 11, and I do not want this anymore in my life.
Hmm.
Just personally, I feel like I've sunk too many hours of my life into it to really need to do it anymore. And I am now also at the point where like I am known enough in the animation industry to get work without needing to be on like Twitter and Instagram constantly. And also I have very much learned from like having Clementine come out that promoting it on platforms is a little bit fruitless at times. Like if Scholastic does it, that's great, but like if I do it, it doesn't. My book has never gotten as much exposure on social media as anything animation wise that I've ever done. Like when I post work from any of the animated shows that I've worked on, those will get thousands and thousands of notes, and that's because they have the fan base built into them. When I post my book, it is my followers who like it, so it'll get a couple hundred, and that's still great. But like it does feel a little bit like what's the point in a way? Like people are gonna find my book outside of this channel, and I feel it's important to acknowledge like the existence of book talk and TikTok, which is like that's a space I don't go to, and I know that comics and graphic novels for middle grade, specifically, well, middle grade books in general aren't really a huge aspect of book talk, but that does seem to be kind of the best way to promote literature right now. And Godspeed to everyone who does it. That platform stresses me out.
I hear you. All the videos I've been doing, I post them to TikTok as well because I'm
Mhm.
like, might as well see what happens. And like, it's gone better than I mean, I'm not getting lots of views, but like, every once in a while, like someone will be like, "Hey, I read that book based on, thanks for saying this. I'm going to read that book." And it's like, "Hey, that's cool." Like it's just,
Yeah.
I think, I think I think we have to I mean, people have said this forever. I'm not new. I am not the one who figured this out. People have been saying this for a long time, but like, I think it's important as a creator and even as a consumer of social media is like, you have to define what your relationship with these platforms is, right? If
Yes.
my
Yeah.
relationship with social media is how I'm going to get rich, is like, good luck. Like, I hope you have a lot of fun
Yeah.
doing that. But and
Then you pivot to being a content
yeah,
creator and you have to put out something every day, and it's probably not going to be your best thing.
yeah,
And I mean, I know people who do it,
yeah.
but like, yeah, it's not for me.
No, and it's not for me either. It's and so when I have tried to sort of reframe my relationship with these platforms, is like, and it's why I want to do these interviews. It's like, I want to use whatever small little thing I can to, promote the things that I care about, that I want people to know, right? Uh there are certainly, I could talk about Dark Souls on YouTube, which I'd love to, but I love those games, but like, nobody, I don't care. Like, there's 8 billion people saying the exact same thing about the game that everybody's played. Like, I want, I want someone to read a book they haven't read before and like it or don't. I don't care. Like, it's just, when you, and as a cartoonist, or as a creator of things, I think you have to, at a certain point, you have to decide, I'm doing this because this is the stuff that I want to exist, because there's plenty other stuff that's going to exist whether I like it or not. I have no control over it. The only power I have is to do what I can, right? To
Yeah.
do my work. And that's why I'm happy Clementine's coming out, or came out. I'm happy Clementine 2 is going to come out. And I'm happy to promote projects uh, by people who are doing, again, original work. Like, that's awesome. That's what we need more of.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know. In that same regard too, like I feel not that I didn't work for it, but I do feel massively lucky to have gotten to make like a creator owned thing in this current era of publishing that we're in,
Yeah.
because it's not happening a lot. Like it's we're getting a lot of, remakes of things, and, books based off of shows and books based off of movies, and I would like to see more creator owned and original content things happening as well.
So here's a question, social media wise, like, and the answer might be different than what I think it is. Do you find, or I guess, you work on stuff that is popular. You've worked on on brands and franchises that are popular, well known, popular, and you've worked on stuff that's birthed out of your brain and your brain alone, right? What feels better? Like, what what are you most proud of? Like, does a thousand likes on a animation post feel better than 20 likes on something you did that's yours? Like, how does that feel to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's really two different types of feelings, to be honest, because like when I post stuff for shows, it is the more, immediate gratification of like seeing people engage with it, seeing, fans be like, "Oh my God, I loved this. I loved like this choice that you made." And that's great. And even kind of outside of social media, but in regards to animation, like I like that there's, a team aspect of it. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
other people to celebrate this with, being that both my coworkers and the fandom. But I also, it's not mine, it's not my project. Like Steven Universe is Rebecca Sugar's, it's not mine, and that's fine. Clementine is mine, and that is a different type of pride. Like that is a different type of feeling to get to go into Barnes and Noble and like know that my book is on a shelf. Like that, I don't know, in the more immediate, like it might not pay off as much on social media, but like on a more grandiose scale of like when I reflect on my body of work
Yeah.
and what I'm proud of, then it is more so my books, and the animation stuff does feel more so like my paycheck. Um I am so happy that like I do still love my job and like I do love what I'm working on, but it isn't, the gratification is not anywhere near the same, in terms of reflecting on the work. It's just social media kind of that gives me the immediate joy of interacting with the fandom.
Yeah. And your book came out last year in the summer, right?
Yes.
Like, and this is the thing I tell people who have books come out all the time. Like, your book's gonna launch. It's gonna get the immediate buyers and the immediate um, feedback that anything gets when it first launches. The best thing about books is books. I mean, shows come and shows go, right? And shows come and shows go based on whatever Netflix is doing or whatever Amazon says their algorithms doing. Those shows come and they go and they disappear. I mean, Steven Universe isn't going to disappear, but shows I've worked on, some of them, they just disappear, right? Um,
Oh, totally. I mean, I've also had shows get fully pulled off of
yeah,
platforms and I don't know where they are now.
a
Yeah.
book, again, a book is a thing. It's a thing that exists in the world, and it's like, I say this to people all the time. A book is a seed, and it, like, seeds disperse and they go places they're not supposed to go, and they end up in hands that you'd never expect them to end up in, and you're going to get an email from somebody in 10 years from a 28, or from a or from a 22-year-old that says, I read this when I was 12 years old. This was important to me. um,
Yeah.
every once in a while I get an email from somebody out of the blue who's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I read your book that you did 15 years ago and I thought it was really good. And those emails, like, people don't understand. That's the stuff that makes me go, oh my God,
Yeah.
it was all worth it. It was all,
Absolutely.
like, that's the magic of books. And that's why I think, for as much as the internet wants to be the thing that dictates everything, the internet is fly by night. It's here and it's gone. Books are, I mean, unless they get destroyed or banned. Oh, you want to talk about book bans? You know,
They're tangible.
books
They're
are
there.
tangible, and
Yeah.
they last through time. They'll sit in a library for 12 years and no one will check it out, but somebody will. Sometimes
Yeah.
somebody's gonna. And that's why I think that's why I still want to do books. That's why I like books. Cuz again, I'll pick up
Definitely.
books. I have this thing where I'll pick up books that were written, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and I'll be like, I can't believe somebody wrote this 30 years ago, you know. And so that's what I try to do at this point. I try to like email authors who's and artists whose stuff I've liked, whether it was new or not, to just say, hey, you did this and it was awesome, so thank you. So thank you. And it's been fun. It makes you feel good as a consumer to let somebody know uh, you did a good job, and it feels even better as the person who did it when somebody takes the time to reach out and say, it doesn't even have to say it's good, just, hey, I read that book, and you go, thank
Yeah.
you. That's why, I don't know.
Yeah. No, definitely. And yeah, I should say the mess like yeah, this is my favorite part of social media, right? Is the Instagram messages, usually on Instagram anyway, that I get from moms who are like, hey, my kid doesn't read. My
Yeah,
kid does not fucking like school. My kid has not put your book down. When is the next one coming out? And I have like a folder in my phone of screenshots of those messages
yeah.
because that is insanely important. And I also love that I'm not on Facebook anymore, but several people have reached out to my mom to send her those
That's
messages, which
awesome.
is also maybe even more adorable is my mom calling me to like freak out about that. Like
Yeah,
that's mwah, chef's kiss. Like
absolutely.
that's the stuff of life right there.
Yeah. uh,
Yeah. Also, this is an aside, but as I was ranting about book talk, I realized I should say I am on TikTok, and I when I did put my book up, like I don't use it very often, and like using it as like a consumer of media like overwhelms me, but I
yeah,
do post on there sometimes. Um, and when I did post my book announcement for it, I got like more engagement on that than I have gotten across like any other platform in years.
yeah. And I'm an anti. When TikTok came out, I was like, never gonna do it. Nah, it's dumb. And as I've been making videos, I'm like, well, you have to make yourself uncomfortable, go to places you didn't know, and like, it's not as, I don't know, the way my TikTok setup is like, I don't spend I rarely, consume stuff on TikTok, but it's like, you like watch some stuff that you do like, and it'll show you cool stuff, and uh,
Yeah,
use it the way, use it so it doesn't use you. I guess that's what I try to
absolutely.
think of. It's like, I do have
Mine's
power. I have
curated
power
to
in this
dance
situation.
videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine is weird people who make weird synth music and then
Fuck yeah.
animate like weird videos to synth music, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'm glad somebody's doing this. But I'm not on there very much. You know, but that's, I guess I would say to creators, young and old, like, this whole landscape's changing. It's changing all the time. Try it. Who the hell knows, right? What's the worst thing? There's plenty of people doing way worse shit than you are did anywhere else. So
Truth.
just do
Yeah.
it. Who cares?
It's definitely worth trying. It's just it is not worth getting bogged down by
Yeah.
to the point that you stop creating
If it
or
makes you,
feel
if
bad
it's
about yourself.
if you don't feel good, don't do it. Like if it makes you
Yeah,
feel bad, get out of there. Like, that's, and I still don't do that. I still like, oh, Twitter.
of course.
But I think I had one last cool question for you,
Cool.
but I don't remember it. So I'm probably, how's that dog?
He good. He curled up with all of the boxes from this microphone.
for the viewer or the listener, Leigh has a. Can you describe him for me?
Yes, he is a robust ham loaf covered in a golden lush fur with two Doritos stuck on his head. He's a 8-year-old corgi.
He's a dream, and I love him.
He has a little chicken nugget tail. I love him
Ooh!
so much.
Oh, we all do. You guys should post more photos of him, please.
We can do that. Yeah,
Please.
definitely could do that. Um, I'll make like a warlock reaction in the puppet
Let's
folder.
do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, I think, the end of my questions. I want to thank Leigh Luna for joining me on this wild ride. I hope this interview comes out good, and anybody watching or listening, uh, check out Leigh's book, Clementine Fox and the Great Island Adventure. It's good. Again, if you have kids, if you have young kids, they will like it, guaranteed. If you are a weirdo adult who can read a middle grade book and still have fun, like, you'll like it too. I enjoyed it, and I usually hate everything, and I liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's got that.
Thank
It's
you.
got a little
I
bit.
did.
It's got mischief. It's got menace, and those are like the two M's of my life. This is what I love most: mischief and menace, and it's got both.
It is very much that. Yeah, and I do try to write to like I write for kids, but like I don't write for kids the way that some people I know write for kids. Like, you know, there are authors who are writing for an age group. I am writing and it happens to be for that age group. So I don't know. I think it makes me think of story in a little bit of a different way and also hope that that can be more approachable to other people of other ages because of it.
And you know, and I know you're saying that, and every author is going to say that. But as a reader, that's why I like the book, right? Like, I'll read middle grade books. I don't love middle grade books because I'm not a child, right? Like, I'm an adult man, uh, and I've
Warlock, you're ruining
no,
everything.
Warlock could never ruin anything. And I'll read middle grade stuff, and it's like, this is good, but like, kids will like this. But I'm an adult. I'm not gonna say I liked something if I didn't like it. Like, that's why I read Clementine Fox, and I was like, oh, this is I'd say it's beyond just a middle grade book. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
So, congratulations. I will post a link somewhere to find your stuff. But if you want to plug anything, your website, your Instagram, anything, you can do that now if you want.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Lee Luna Comics on basically everything. My website is leelunacomics.com. Yeah, like I said, I have a TikTok that I update like once every 3 months. If you want to come over there, that's chill. Say hi. I am on Instagram like every day. So that's probably the best place to get at me.
Cool. Big thanks to Leigh for coming on the show and talking to me. If you haven't checked out Clementine Fox and the Great Island Adventure, please do. You or your young person in your life will probably like it. And I've got links to more of Leigh's work below in the video info area. Check it out.